Hey there, Drowsy Historian here. Tonight you're not a noble, a captain, or even someone with a last name that survives the record books. No, tonight you're something much more disposable, a kidnapped soul in 18th century West Africa, bound for a journey you didn't choose, toward a world that doesn't want you, only your labour. You don't know the word plantation yet. You've never seen the ocean, but in a few hours you'll be locked below deck on a floating prison designed to turn people into cargo, and you won't see the sun again for weeks. So before the chains rattle and the keel groans and the hold starts to stink of despair, take a second to leave a comment, letting me know where you're listening from and what time it is. I love knowing which corners of the world are drifting off to these gentle historical nightmares. And if you want to support the channel, hear these stories early, plus get ad-free audio of the episodes, there's a Patreon link in the description. But for now, lie back, get comfortable. Let's begin. You don't remember the exact moment the world tilted sideways, only that it was quiet when it began. Maybe the birds were still chirping. Maybe someone was laughing. Maybe you were asleep, still curled beside someone you loved. There's no battle cry, no trumpet, no dramatic thunderclap, just a fast, terrible shift in what the world feels like. The shouting starts all at once, feet pounding. The clash of metal on wood. You don't recognise the language. You try to run, but your legs feel wrong. Too slow. Like they've betrayed you before the men even reach you. They're fast, efficient. They don't look at you like a person, just something to be gathered. Like firewood or livestock, their eyes slide past yours. You cry out, but no one answers. Someone nearby screams, but it ends quickly. Too quickly. A fist to the face, a blow to the ribs. You hit the ground hard and feel the taste of blood, sharp and salty in your mouth. Hands grip your arms and legs. You're being tied, wrists yanked behind you with practiced ease. You try to speak, to ask why, to protest that there's been a mistake, but your words aren't useful here. They speak another tongue, and even if they understood you, they wouldn't care. The first few hours are the worst because you still think this is temporary. Maybe you'll be ransomed, maybe someone will come looking. You've heard stories of raids before, and stories end, don't they? You try to keep track of direction, of how far you've been taken, but it all blurs together. Trees, hills, dirt, heat, sweat, a river crossing. You lose count of the days almost immediately. No one tells you what's happening. You're just herded, slapped, pushed, and occasionally shoved to the ground when you walk too slowly. They don't bother separating you from strangers. Or maybe they do, and you just don't know it. You're surrounded by unfamiliar faces, some terrified, some blank, some already broken in ways you're starting to understand. There's an old man who keeps praying under his breath, over and over, like a lullaby or a spell. A child with eyes too wide. A girl limping on a raw bandaged foot. No one cries after the first night. You learn quickly that crying is useless and it makes you more of a target. You try to sit quietly, to make yourself small. You're not shackled at first, rope is cheaper, but it burns into your skin all the same. Your wrists swell, your ankles bleed, you start to smell like damp leather and old salt. Sometimes they stop walking long enough to throw down something to chew on. Dried grain, a lump of cassava, a piece of something vaguely resembling meat. It doesn't matter what it is, you eat it because it's there. Hunger is faster than disgust. No one tells you where you're going. You start to suspect they don't care if you know. After a while, the questions in your mind begin to dissolve. You stop wondering why. You stop thinking in sentences. You just keep your feet moving and try not to fall. People who fall don't always get back up. Some are beaten until they move again. Others are left behind. You see one woman collapse and not rise. She isn't even checked. A bird lands near her before you're out of sight. The walking doesn't stop. It just changes rhythm. Sometimes faster, sometimes slower, but never merciful. You're chained now, not with rope, but with metal. Cold when it's put on, burning hot by midday. It clinks and tugs with every step, connecting you to the people beside you like unwilling dancers in a cruel procession. You try to adjust to the weight, the constant friction, the unpredictability of other bodies swaying or stumbling at the worst times. One misstep from someone ahead of you pulls your wrists, your neck, your balance. You learn quickly not to blame them. You'll trip soon too. Your feet blister, then they crack, then they stop bleeding because there's no moisture left to spare. The ground beneath you changes every few days, hard-packed dirt, then stones, then something more like mud, but it doesn't get easier. Some days are baking hot, others just rain. You march through both. You're allowed to relieve yourself only when the guards say so, and never with privacy. You learn to stop caring. Dignity was heavy, and you had to leave it somewhere back on the trail to survive. No one tells you how long this march will last. You only know the sun rises and sets and rises again, and you're still walking. They feed you enough to keep you upright. Barely. A lump of starch, a handful of old grain, sometimes a gourd of water if you're lucky. When they run low, you go without. When you collapse, someone shouts. If you don't rise fast enough, you're kicked. If you still don't rise, you're dragged. If you're too weak to be dragged, you're left. The group thins, people disappear. A young boy you barely spoke to dies quietly one night. His head slumped forward against the iron collar. No one moves him until morning. His body is unshackled without ceremony and rolled off the trail. By noon there's no sign he ever existed, except for the awkward silence in the rhythm of your line. The buzzards start to follow. First just one, then two, then a swirling flock you can't ignore. You try not to look up. They never circle for long before landing. Sometimes you pass through villages. Sometimes the villagers glance your way. Some scowl, some smirk, some look away. You start to wonder if this path is well worn, if people know what kind of procession this is and choose not to see it. Or maybe they do see it, and that's worse. At first you look at every person you pass as a possible rescuer. That delusion lasts maybe a week. After that, you start looking through them like they look through you. There are nights when the group camps in open fields, ringed by guards. Fires are lit, but not for warmth, only to keep animals away. You sleep in a pile of limbs, too exhausted to care who you're touching. The chains dig in when you roll over. Someone always coughs, someone always groans. You wake up sore, soaked with dew and shivering. Or sweating, or both. The mornings blur together. You forget how many days it's been since you last bathed, or saw your reflection, or said your own name aloud. The ones who survive start to move with a kind of numb synchronization. You don't talk anymore, not because you don't want to, but because what would you even say? Everyone's story is more or less the same now. You were something, then you were taken, now you're something else. No one wants to dwell on the transition. It hurts more than the march itself. Your body begins to change without asking your permission. Your shoulders hunch, your walk shortens. You stop lifting your knees, dragging your feet instead. You don't realize how skinny you're getting until you glance at someone else and see their ribs. Then you notice your own. You move less like a person and more like a machine that someone forgot to oil. When you dream of water, not drinking it, but being inside it. Cool, weightless, invisible. You dream of trees, of beds, of places you didn't appreciate enough when they were real. You dream of running sometimes, but always alone, and always too slow. You wake up from those dreams feeling heavier than before. Eventually the air shifts. You smell it before you see it. Salt, fish, rot. It's the ocean. You've heard of it maybe, distant stories from merchants or old men, but now it's real, and huge and looming. The wind picks up and the air becomes sticky. Everything clings to your skin. Dust, sweat, hopelessness. There's shouting ahead. Wooden structures, flags, guns. You realise you've reached the coast, but it doesn't feel like a destination. It feels like a pause, a staging ground. The end of the road only in the way a plank is the end of the dock. The ocean isn't escape, it's just the next part of the sentence. Your legs barely feel like yours anymore. They move when someone tells them to, not because you want them to. You've stopped thinking in full thoughts. The world has shrunk to what's directly in front of you, the back of the person ahead, the chain on your ankle, the burn in your throat. So when you first see the fort, it doesn't register as important. It's just another place, another stone, another stop. It's only once you're herded inside that you understand. This isn't just a stop. It's a holding pen, a warehouse for people, a place where human lives are stacked like crates, inventoried without ceremony, and left to decay until someone decides they're ready to be moved again. The fort is made of stone, thick, sun-bleached, crumbling at the corners, and it looms with the same indifference as the men who built it. You're forced through a narrow gate and into a courtyard lined with heavy doors and rusted iron bars. The air inside is hot, but it's not the same heat as the march. This heat doesn't move. It sits on your skin like wet wool, heavy and stagnant, already thick with breath and waste. The walls trap everything, the stink, the fear, the sounds of dozens of strangers trying not to fall apart all at once. You're packed into a cell that wasn't made for this many people. There are no windows, no beds, no water unless someone remembers. Just a stone floor slick with filth and a corner that everyone silently agrees to use as a latrine. No one gives you instructions. You just learn by watching the others. How they curl into corners, how they avoid eye contact, how they ration movement like it's food. At first, your body rebels. You try to stay upright. You try not to breathe through your mouth. You try to convince yourself this is still temporary. But by the second day, those instincts are gone. You're hungry all the time, not the kind of hunger that growls, the kind that settles in and builds a home inside your chest. The guards bring food sometimes, a bowl of something grey and congealed, tossed through the bars without a word. You eat it because it's there, because refusing would mean collapsing. And if you collapse, someone might decide you're not worth the cost of shipping. The smell never leaves, it shifts. Some days more rot, some days more piss, some days blood. But it never goes. It seeps into your skin and coats the back of your throat. You stop noticing it until a new group arrives. Then you see the flinch in their eyes, the way their stomachs turn. You remember you looked like that too once. Time loses meaning. There's no sunrise or sunset inside these walls, only shifts in heat and noise. Sometimes it's quiet for hours, days even. Then suddenly, screaming, a scuffle, chains, footsteps, someone being taken out. You don't ask where they're going. You don't want to know. You only hope they're not coming back, because returning means something worse happened to them outside. You try to sleep. You fail. The floor is damp and uneven. Bodies shift beside you. Someone coughs through the night. Someone mutters in their sleep. A child nearby wakes up crying and is immediately hushed by their mother's shaking hand. Eventually, you drift off, but it's not rest, it's escape. And even your dreams smell like this place. The guards don't speak your language. Most don't speak at all. They grunt, gesture, and sometimes shout in words you don't understand. You learn their moods by the sound of their footsteps. You know which one kicks, which one doesn't look at you, which one makes jokes you're glad you can't translate. You stop expecting kindness. You start fearing indifference more than violence. At least violence means you exist. Your body starts to betray you in new ways. Your skin breaks out in sores. Your legs cramp from days without stretching. You lose weight and strength, and the line between hunger and sickness blurs. You forget what your own voice sounds like. You forget what clean air smells like. You forget what you were before this. It's not that you're trying to forget. It's that remembering hurts more. There's a door in the far wall. You notice it early on. People go through it and don't return. You hear the ocean sometimes, just beyond that wall. The gulls, the waves, the creak of wood. You start to understand what's coming. You try not to think about it. But the longer you're here, the clearer it becomes. This isn't where the story ends. It's where the next horror waits. And it's worse. You tell yourself just once that you'll survive this, that you'll live to return home. But the thought feels hollow in your mouth, like a word you only half remember. You stop repeating it. You stop saying anything at all. Because here, in this place of waiting, you don't feel like a person anymore. Just wait, just numbers, just something that hasn't shipped yet. You don't know what day it is when they come for you. The thought has blurred time into a dull smear, a long, stagnant nothing. So when the door opens and the guards start barking orders, your body doesn't react at first. It takes a kick to the ribs to remember how to move. You rise slowly, joints stiff, eyes blinking against the sudden brightness outside. The sky feels too large after so long in the dark. You almost miss the walls. They line you up in the courtyard, shackling you again. The manacles bite like they never left. There's a new urgency in the air, something sour and fast. You're not told where you're going, but you're not stupid. You've heard things, seen the door, smelled the salt, felt the dread growing in the pit of your stomach. You'd hoped, somewhere deep inside, that maybe they'd forgotten you, that maybe they'd changed their minds. But no, you're going. You walk in silence, escorted by men with muskets and blank expressions. The road is short, the heat is unbearable, and then you see it, the ship. It's bigger than anything you've ever seen, but also wrong. The size isn't comforting, it's grotesque. A floating wall of wood and iron, ropes like veins stretching up into the sky, sails furled like folded wings. It rocks slightly in the harbour, creaking, as if already groaning under the weight of what it's about to carry. It doesn't look alive, but it doesn't look dead either. It looks hungry. You hesitate. Everyone does. Not openly, no one dares stop moving, but your feet slow without permission. This is it. The thing that will take you from land, from language, from anything familiar. You realise all at once that there's no path back. Even if you jumped the line and ran, where would you go? The sea is in front of you, and behind you are rifles. The gangplank is steep, narrow and slick with something you don't want to identify. It bounces slightly underfoot. You grip the chain in front of you instinctively, as if someone else's weight might keep you upright. The sailors watch you as you board, not with curiosity, but calculation. Some smirk, some don't look at all. They're used to this, you're not. At the top of the ramp, the smell hits you. You thought the fort was bad. You were wrong. This is different. Not just filth, but something deeper. Moldavian bilge, unwashed bodies layered with blood and vomit, and something else. Fear, maybe, or the absence of it. You gag reflexively. So does the man behind you. The sailors don't react. They've smelled worse. They force you to strip. No explanation, no privacy. Just a shove, a gesture, a demand. Your clothes, what little is left of them, are taken and tossed aside like trash. You're examined like livestock, fingers digging into your mouth, your ribs, your thighs. A nod from one of them signals something, and then you're prodded toward a hatch in the deck. You descend into the belly of the ship. The stairs are steep and slick. The air thickens with every step. Your shoulders brush the walls. The ceiling lowers. The light disappears. And when your feet hit the floor of the hold, you stop. Not by choice. Your body just refuses to go any farther. The space is too small. The air is too wrong. It's dark but not silent. You hear breathing, shifting, chains, a cough, a sob, the shuffle of someone trying to sit up. Your eyes adjust barely. You see bodies, row after row of them, pressed together like grain in a sack. No space, no privacy, just limbs and chains and the stench of desperation. There's nowhere to stand, no clean corner to claim. You're told where to go, not with words but with shoves. You crawl into your assigned slot like a piece of cargo sliding into place. The space they've given you isn't long enough to stretch, isn't tall enough to sit. isn't wide enough to turn. You lie on your side, knees bent, chained to the floor or the person next to you. It's hard to tell. Someone's foot is in your back. Someone else's breath is hot against your neck. The wood beneath you is already wet. You hear more being brought down, more chains, more bodies, more coughing. The air grows hotter with each new arrival. You try to slow your breathing to conserve what little oxygen there is, but panic has other ideas. Your chest rises too fast. Your skin feels too tight. The urge to stand, to run, to scream builds inside you like a trapped animal. But there's no space for panic here. You swallow it down and go still. You realise suddenly that you don't know how long this part will last. Not the voyage. You know about that, vaguely, a terrible promise whispered at the fort. But this part, the waiting, the cramming, the dark. You don't know when you'll see the sky again. You don't know if you ever will. You close your eyes and try to imagine land, trees, fresh air, but the ship rocks and the chains rattle, and someone moans nearby, and the illusion crumbles. You're not on land anymore. You're not anything familiar anymore. You're not home. You're not even on the ocean yet. You're just inside the thing that will take you there. The first thing you notice is the heat. Not the sun's heat. That's a memory now, but something thicker. Wet, stale, human. It doesn't sting like fire. It clings, like breath that never leaves the room. You didn't know air could feel used, but this air has already passed through 100 lungs and come back worse. Every inhale tastes like other people's sweat, fear and rot, and there is no exhale long enough to push it away. The second thing you notice is how dark it is. Not just dim, dark. The kind of dark that presses on your skin like another body. There's no night vision, no adjusting. Your eyes stop trying. You measure the space not by sight, but by sound and smell, and the pressure of limbs that aren't yours. You're packed so tightly, you can't tell where your body ends. Ankles knock against shins. Shoulders dig into backs. Elbows press into ribs. You're not lying beside others. You're lying with them, inside a human mass that never stops shifting, sweating, or trembling. You're shackled, of course, everyone is. Maybe at the ankle, maybe the neck, maybe both. The iron doesn't cut anymore. It just bruises constantly until you forget what it feels like to be unbound. You learn the range of your chain instinctively, not because you test it, but because you exceed it every time you try to stretch or shift. You're pulled short by pain. You flinch. Someone else flinches in return, and the chain groans like it's bored of your movements. The floor beneath you is made of wood, though you wouldn't have guessed it from the feel. It's slick, uneven, and never dry. You don't want to think about what's soaked into it. Sweat, blood, vomit, urine. Worse. You try not to touch it more than you have to, but there's no choice. There's no bedding, no cloth, no reprieve, just you and the floor and whatever disease lives in the spaces between the planks. You stop keeping track of time almost immediately. There's no light to separate morning from evening, no breeze to shift the hours, just the endless cycle of breathing and sweating and waiting for something to happen. The sailors open the hatch sometimes, just long enough to shout instructions or throw down buckets of food or water. When that happens, a shaft of light cuts through the dark like a blade. It makes things worse. You see how bad it really is. You see how thin everyone's gotten. You see the sores, the ribs, the cracked lips, the eyes that don't blink anymore. People cry. Some do it quietly, tears running into the crooks of their elbows. Others sob uncontrollably until they're hit or silenced by the weight of other bodies. Screaming happens too, especially at night, or what you think is night. Some people scream themselves hoarse. Some scream in languages you don't recognize. Some just repeat the same word over and over until it dies in their throat. Then they go quiet. There's always someone vomiting. The motion of the ship is constant, a slow rocking nausea that never gives you solid footing. You never truly lie still. You're always sliding an inch one way, then another. Sometimes someone next to you soils themselves and you flinch, but you don't move. You can't. If you're lucky, you're not the one closest to the runoff. If you're not lucky, the stink clings to you for days. Either way, you breathe through your mouth and try not to gag. It doesn't help. You sleep in scraps. A few minutes here, a few hours there, never deeply. Never without being woken by a sound or a shift or the hot press of someone's breath against your face. Dreams come, but they're worse than the waking. You dream of walking and find your feet chained. You dream of food and wake up tasting bile. You dream of running, but you don't even move in sleep. You can't. Sometimes people talk. They whisper memories or prayers. Some try to make sense of things. What day it is, how far you've gone, what's waiting at the other end. No one really knows. Hope lives here only in fragments, and even that feels dangerous. Someone who talks too much about survival gets quiet after a few days. Maybe they lose their voice. Maybe they lose their mind. Maybe they're just trying not to make promises their body can't keep. Eventually, you learn not to move too much, not to speak unless you must, not to hope that fresh air is coming. You learn that the body beside you might be alive or might not be, and that sometimes it's better not to check. You learn that breathing too deeply only fills your lungs with filth, and that shallow breaths are easier to hold when you're trying not to cry. You learn to stop waiting for things to improve. You learn to endure. At first, you're not even sure what's happening. There's a shout, a creak of the hatch, and then light spills down like it's fallen by accident. You squint, not because it's bright, but because it feels unnatural. Then the noise starts, shouting, metal on wood, buckets being dragged across the deck. The smell reaches you before the food does. It's sharp, greasy, unfamiliar. It doesn't smell rotten exactly, just wrong, like something that once pretended to be food and gave up halfway through. You're fed in shifts, or maybe in batches, or maybe just in chaos. You don't know the system, only that the guards point, grunt, and start moving through the hold with something resembling routine. They don't call names. They don't check who's sick or who's already passed out. They just come. Sometimes it's with ladles, sometimes it's with hands. Once it's with a funnel and a wooden stick. The food itself is barely recognisable. A starchy paste maybe. Sometimes it's hard lumps that taste like ash and wet cloth. Sometimes it's warm, but mostly it's cold and clumped and sits in your stomach like a rock. You eat it anyway. You don't ask what it is. You stopped caring days ago. The goal isn't nourishment, it's obedience. You chew, you swallow, and you try not to throw it back up, because vomiting earns attention. And attention here is dangerous. Some refuse to eat. At first it's out of principle, defiance, pride, a desperate attempt to reclaim control over something, anything. But pride fades fast down here. You learn what happens to the ones who resist. A man to your left clenches his jaw shut. He shakes his head. The guard tries once, twice, then calls someone else. They come with a tool you haven't seen before. Iron jaws shaped like tongs but meaner, designed to wedge the mouth open by force. The man doesn't resist after that. Blood on his chin, food down his throat, a warning to the rest of you. Some are too weak to eat. The guards don't distinguish. Whether it's defiance or delirium, it's treated the same. A blow to the stomach, a slap, a knee to the ribs. Sometimes they shove the food in anyway. Sometimes they walk away and come back later with reinforcements. You learn quickly that you don't get to decide when you're hungry. Hunger isn't about need, it's about schedule. It's about control. Water comes the same way, so rarely, and never enough. You're handed a bucket or a flask or sometimes just a wet cloth. You suck what you can from it. You don't question who else has touched it. You can't afford to. The salt in the air has turned your lips to sandpaper, your tongue to leather. You drink anything that doesn't make you gag. And even that line moves day by day. They inspect you too. Not for comfort, not for care, but to see if you're worth keeping. They check your teeth, your eyes, your limbs. They jab fingers into your joints and look for swelling. They watch how you stand, how you breathe. If you fail whatever unspoken test they've created, you're marked, sometimes with a chalk line, sometimes just a nod between sailors. You never know what it means until someone disappears. You notice things. Which guards are rougher? Which ones stare longer than they should? Which ones joke with each other while holding someone's head in place? It's not all the same. Cruelty comes in flavours. Some deliver it mechanically, others with enthusiasm. You try not to react. You try to become invisible. You try to master stillness, quietness, smallness, but it doesn't always help. Punishment is always nearby. If someone speaks too loudly, or moves too suddenly, or even breathes wrong at the wrong time, there's a cost. A cuff to the ear, a kick, a day without food. The consequences are arbitrary enough to feel intentional. Like the point isn't order, it's unpredictability. You start to understand the real lesson. Do as you're told, not because it makes sense, but because asking questions will break you faster than any chain. Sometimes someone snaps. A man screams and throws the food bucket. He's beaten so badly, you wonder if he's still breathing by the end. No one speaks about it. Someone else takes his place, eats what he refused, and the cycle resets. You tell yourself you won't break like that. You'll be smarter, quieter. But the truth is, it's not always about strength. It's about randomness. You can do everything right and still be the one they drag away. Eventually, you stop thinking of food as food. It's not a meal. It's a transaction, an expectation, a reminder that you're allowed to survive, but only if you make yourself easy to manage. You eat because you don't want to be noticed. You eat because you're afraid not to. You eat to prove you're still worth shipping. And as you swallow mouthful after mouthful of this unnameable slop, sitting in your own sweat beside someone too sick to move, you realise what they've been doing all along. Not feeding you, training you, breaking you, turning you from something that once had choices into something that doesn't ask for them anymore. Death stops being shocking after the first few days. At first it catches your breath. You hear the rasp of it, the choking, the gurgle, the rattle in the chest of someone beside you, and you think, surely someone will notice, surely someone will help. But no one does. Not the guards, not the others. Eventually, not even you. The space is too crowded, too loud, too soaked in misery to make room for grief. Death is just another noise. Sometimes it comes slow. A man coughing for days, each wheeze weaker than the last. You hear him try to sit up, then fail, then stop trying. One morning, he doesn't respond when he's nudged. His head stays at the same awkward angle no living neck would choose. A sailor looks down through the hatch, shrugs, and keeps moving. No urgency, no ritual, just a mental tally updated by habit. One less mouth to feed. Other times, it's fast. Fevers that bloom suddenly and burn out overnight. Fits that come with no warning, limbs jerking, teeth grinding, eyes rolling back. You don't need a name for the illness to understand what it does. The stench of infection. The skin gone pale or green or slick with sweat. The way others lean away when someone starts to shake. No one moves to help. You can't. There's no space and there's no point. If you reach out, you only get dragged down with them. And then there are the ones who go quiet, not sick, not screaming, just finished. You don't always notice right away. Someone stops responding, stops blinking, stops breathing. Hours pass before a sailor finally shines a lantern down and calls for the body to be removed. When that happens, there's a brief flurry of motion. Chains are unfastened, limbs are dragged free. The corpse is pulled out like cargo, limp and silent. No words, no farewell. Just a hollow thump as it's hauled above deck. You hear what happens next, the soft rhythm of footsteps, the scrape of the body against the wood, then a splash, not deep, not dramatic, Just a small disturbance in the water, like a stone dropped in a well. That's it. That's the burial. The ocean doesn't object. It takes what it's given. It always does. After a while, you stop counting. There are too many. A boy whose name you never learned. A woman who used to whisper prayers at night. An old man who clung to life for days, muttering to himself in a language no one else understood. They vanish one by one, and you try not to think about them. Mourning is a luxury you can't afford. Grief makes noise. Noise draws attention. And attention still gets punished. You learn to tell when it's coming. The signs are always the same. Shivering in heat. Eyes too bright or too dull. Bleeding gums. A foul smell clinging to the breath. You start calculating distances, hoping the sick are chained far enough away. Not because you don't care, because you do. That's the problem. You care enough to be afraid. Sometimes people try to hide it. They sit up straighter, speak louder, pretend to eat, but the body always gives them away. And when the guards notice, they mark them. Not with concern, with efficiency. Some are given less food, some are taken out early. Not for treatment, just for disposal. If you look weak, you're seen as waste. There's no use pretending otherwise. You stop looking too closely at anyone. The moment you start hoping someone will make it, they're gone. The moment you think you'll be next, you're still breathing. It becomes impossible to know which fate is worse. The ones who die go quickly, and perhaps mercifully. The ones who live stay in the darkness, soaked in the stink of others, aching and hungry, and uncertain which breath will be their last. Survival doesn't feel like victory. It feels like punishment. And then there are the suicides. Not many, but enough to know it's possible. You hear whispers about one who leapt overboard during airtime, got loose from the chain, made it past the guards, and jumped. They say she didn't scream. Just ran and vanished into the sea. The story spreads fast, even in whispers, because everyone wants to know if it's real. Everyone wants to believe there's a way out, even if it's downward. You tell yourself you're not that desperate, not yet. You cling to whatever sliver of instinct is keeping your body upright, keeping your mind from slipping. You repeat a phrase, maybe, or focus on one memory that still feels warm. But even that starts to fade, not all at once, slowly, like a candle drowning in its own wax. You try not to look when someone starts foaming at the mouth. You try not to flinch when the chains beside you go slack. You try not to listen to the splash, but you always do. And when the hatch slams shut again, and the dark closes in, you feel the silence that follows. Not peace, not relief, just absence. Death has passed. This time, it wasn't you. You think the worst of it is behind you. The violence, the chains, the dead. But then your body starts turning on you in quieter, crueler ways. It begins with your nose. A tightening when you inhale, a stinging behind the eyes, a reflex to turn your head, even when you know there's nowhere to turn. The stench lives here now. It's thick, wet, and permanent. You thought you'd gotten used to it, but that's not how it works. The smell doesn't stay still. It changes, shifts, finds new ways to get inside you. It coats everything. Not just the air, but your tongue, your hair, the cracks in your skin. It's not one smell, it's layers, sweat, feces, urine, vomit, blood, infection, the sour tang of unwashed flesh, the sweet rotting scent of something dead and just beginning to ferment. 100 human bodies decaying in real time, side by side, in a wooden box too small to hold them. There's no ventilation, no breeze, no escape. You breathe because you have to, and every breath makes you feel more contaminated than the last. You stop trying to breathe through your nose. That helps for a day, maybe 2. Then the taste creeps in. Everything you eat tastes like it was dipped in the hold first. The water too. You swallow, and it brings the smell down into your throat, where it lingers like an infection. You try holding your breath when someone nearby vomits or soils themselves, but eventually you have to inhale, and when you do, it's like punishment. The stink waits for you. It always does. The guards don't come down often. They can't stand it. Even they gag at the hatch. You hear them curse under their breath, spit on the deck, cover their faces with cloth. That's how bad it is. The men paid to transport, you would rather do anything else. But you don't have that option. You live in it. You sit in it. You sleep in it. It becomes your skin. After a while, you can't tell if it's gotten worse or if you've just started to rot too. You notice when someone new comes down. Their reaction tells you what you've stopped feeling. The retching, the watering eyes, the frantic blinking. You remember doing that too once. Now you just breathe it in, slow and shallow, like it's normal, like it's air. You envy the ones who still react. They haven't gone numb yet. It affects everything. Your appetite fades, not just from fear or sickness, but from the realization that food and filth are inseparable here. You eat while crouched beside someone leaking diarrhea. You drink water that tastes like mildew and metal. You wipe your mouth with the back of your hand and realize it smells like someone else. You think about what's growing in your clothes, your hair, your gums. You think about infection, but then you stop. There's no point. If it hasn't killed you yet, it's just waiting. Your body starts to change in ways you can't track. Your nose always runs. Your throat always itches. Your eyes stay red and crusted. The skin behind your ears and between your fingers breaks open and stays raw. Your nails turn strange colours. You itch constantly, but scratching only makes it worse. You can't tell where your body ends and the smell begins. It's all one thing now, a slow breakdown with no clean line between sickness and environment. People try to mask it. You see some rub rags over their faces or stuffed cloth in their noses. A woman next to you bites down on a piece of wood to keep from retching. None of it works. The stink is in the wood, in the rags, in the chains. You could drink the ocean and still taste it in your mouth. It's not just a presence, it's a force. You stop dreaming about escape. You start dreaming about air. Not freedom, just space to breathe. You picture wind, cold and sharp and clean, moving over your skin like water. You imagine forests, rain, smoke from cooking fires, the breath of a loved one on your cheek. You don't care if you make it home. You just want to inhale without pain. Sometimes you wonder if this is intentional, if someone planned it this way. The chains break your body. The hunger breaks your will. But the smell breaks your sense of reality. It makes you question whether you were ever anything else but this. A body trapped in rot, waiting to be sold. Eventually, you don't flinch anymore. Someone dies beside you, and you don't even wrinkle your nose. You barely notice the change in the air. It was already unbearable. What's one more layer? You forget what clean smells like. You forget that breathing was ever supposed to feel good. It starts as a whisper, like everything does down here. Someone says a man broke his chain. Someone says a group overpowered a guard. Someone else says there's going to be a mutiny. Not hope exactly, but movement, like a ripple in thick stagnant water. You hear the rumours from the person pressed up behind you, who heard it from someone 2 bodies over, who swore they saw it with their own eyes. It spreads in the dark, in low voices and sideways glances, the same way sickness spreads. Quiet, quick, and dangerous. You want to believe it. You want to think there's still fire left in the hold, that someone somewhere still knows how to resist. Maybe it's pride. Maybe it's fear dressed up as bravery. Maybe it's just the idea that you aren't entirely powerless, even now. It doesn't matter. The rumour moves faster than anything else has down here. Faster than food or air, or even death. You feel it in your chest, a pressure that builds for the first time, not from dread, but from something like anticipation. Then someone screams, not a cry of pain, not at first, a battle cry almost, a defiant roar that cuts through the gloom like a knife. It's close, too close. You flinch, everyone flinches, chains rattle, bodies shift. You hear thuds, sharp cracks, something heavy being slammed into wood. Shouting in 2 languages. Then gunfire. It's brief, loud, final. The silence that follows is worse than the sound. You don't know how many tried. You don't know what they planned or how far they got. Maybe they had a knife, smuggled or stolen. Maybe someone had managed to pick a lock. Maybe they were just desperate enough to throw their fists at armed men and hope someone else would follow. For a moment, maybe it felt possible. For a moment, maybe they believed. But it doesn't matter now. You never see them again. The punishment is swift, even for those who didn't join. The hatch opens. Guards flood in. They don't ask questions. They don't care who did what. They beat whoever they can reach, methodically and without emotion. You press yourself into the filth and try to shrink, to vanish. You take a blow to the ribs anyway. Someone beside you has their head slammed into the floor. Someone else is dragged out screaming. There is no pattern. There is only pain. Afterward, the silence lasts for days. No whispers, no eye contact, no names spoken aloud. Whatever spark had flickered is gone now, smothered under boots and blood. You feel it in the way people lie stiller, breathe shallower, speak less. Resistance was a fire, and now there is only smoke. You're not sure if the ones who tried it were brave or foolish. You just know you're still here, and they're not. The guards seem different after that. More alert, less lazy. They come down more often, even if only to loom. Their eyes scan the hold with something close to suspicion, or maybe triumph. One of them smiles too much now, a sharp toothy grin, like he's daring someone else to try. No one does. Even the sick keep quiet. But resistance doesn't always mean fighting. Sometimes it's smaller. Someone sings softly in the dark, a tune from home, mournful and cracked. It doesn't last long. A guard hears and shouts, and the voice falls silent. Another day, someone refuses to eat again. This time, they're not beaten. They're left to starve. After 2 days, they change their mind. Or someone else changes it for them. You think about what it would take to resist, not just to fight, but to rebel, even in your mind. You try to picture yourself standing up, grabbing a chain, striking out. You try to imagine yelling, grabbing the nearest guard by the throat, dying on your feet instead of surviving like this. But the image collapses under the weight of reality. You can barely lift your head. You haven't stood upright in days. You don't remember what your own voice sounds like. Maybe the ones who fought were lucky. Maybe they got to be people for one more minute before they were silenced. Maybe they felt something. Or maybe they died afraid, alone, and in pain, just like everyone else will. Either way, you're not one of them. You're still lying here, still silent, still waiting for the next command. You tell yourself it's not cowardice, it's strategy, survival, that you're saving your strength for when it really matters. But the longer you wait, the less real that voice becomes. You start to wonder if silence is who you are now, if endurance is the only thing left to call your own. The rumours don't come back, no one tries again. If anyone dreams of rebellion, they keep it buried deep, where even they can't find it. And in the dark, in the heat, in the smell and the silence, you understand something that hadn't occurred to you before. They don't need to kill everyone who resists. They only need to kill the idea that resistance is possible. They call it exercise, though it feels more like airing out meat. You don't know why they choose today, or why they skipped yesterday, or how long it's been since the last time. Time below deck stopped following rules, but now the hatch creaks open and voices shout down, rough and impatient. You're hauled up in groups, half blinded by light and half dragged by force. The chains clink louder in the open air. Every joint protests. Your legs forget how to stand. The sun hits your skin like a punishment. It doesn't warm, it burns. Your body, slick with sweat and rot, reacts like it's being scalded. Your eyes water instantly. The sudden brightness feels unnatural, like a mistake you weren't meant to witness. You squint against it, but it's no use. The sky is too wide, the air too sharp. You dreamed of fresh air. Now that you have it, it cuts like glass. You're not unshackled, of course not. The chains stay on, at your wrists, your ankles, sometimes your neck. You're marched or dragged to the upper deck, then lined up in rows. You think maybe you'll be given water or a cloth to wipe your face, or at least a moment to rest. Instead, they shout again. Gestures come next. You're told to move, to jump, to sway, to mimic some parody of activity. The sailors call it dancing. They laugh as they say it. Make them dance. You don't know who first decided that weakness could be cured with forced motion, but you know what happens if you refuse. The whip comes out before your body can explain that it's not ready, that your legs don't work right, that your lungs haven't expanded fully in days. The lash doesn't wait for excuses. You stagger forward, lifting your knees like a puppet in a storm, trying not to collapse. Everyone else does the same. Bodies bobbing, limbs twitching, a strange and broken rhythm of survival. You fall once, just for a second. Your foot catches on a chain. Your knees hit the deck hard enough to splinter. You taste blood and salt. Before you can push yourself up, a boot presses against your spine and shoves you back down. A shout follows, laughter. Then the whip. Not long, just enough to make sure you remember. Then you're yanked upright and shoved back into motion. The salt in the air stings your skin, which has already cracked from filth and friction. The wounds from shackles are raw, and the ocean breeze doesn't heal them. It scrapes them open wider. Your lips are split, your mouth is dry. Every breath you take feels like inhaling fire through wet cloth. You dreamed of this air once. Now it makes you cough until your chest hurts. The deck itself isn't clean. It's stained, with rust, with old blood, with the remnants of whoever was up here last. You try not to look down. You try not to notice the flies or the way the wood squelches slightly under bare feet. There's no safe place to step, only orders to keep stepping. You catch glimpses of the ocean between movements, endless, blue-grey, stretching in every direction like a promise you'll never reach. You used to be afraid of it. Now you just feel numb. The water doesn't care about you. The sky doesn't care either. Nothing up here does. It's just another room, bigger and brighter than the one below, but just as full of despair. Birds circle overhead, gulls mostly. They scream at each other and dive low, bold enough to swoop near the ship, but smart enough to stay out of reach. You wonder if they know what's down in the hold. You wonder if they recognise this ship by smell. You wonder if they follow slave ships like scavengers, follow dying animals. You try not to think about it too hard. Eventually the motion stops, not because they pity you, because they've seen enough. You've been exercised, stretched, beaten into motion, into compliance, into momentary health that isn't real. Some are allowed to sit for a moment before being sent back down. Others are shoved immediately. You feel the sun for another minute, and then the shadow returns. The hatch yawns open like a mouth, and you're pushed back inside. The darkness greets you like a lover. It's wet, it's hot, it's familiar. You lower yourself into your place, sore and breathless, your skin burning where the sun touched it. You still taste salt, still smell the stink of your own sweat. Your muscles twitch, confused by what just happened. You lie still, and the hold swallows you again. For a brief second, you wonder if the trip above was better than staying below, but only for a second. Up there, you burned. Down here, you rot. There is no mercy, only different kinds of damage. And so, even sunlight becomes a weapon. Even fresh air has teeth. It begins as a sound, a wet cough. Not unusual at first, but the hold is full of noise after all. People groan, wheeze, shift constantly. But this cough is different. It repeats, louder each time, rattling deeper in the chest. It lingers, echoing off the planks like a warning no one wants to hear. You try not to look. Try not to let your face show fear, but you hear it, and you know what it means. Soon there are more. Another cough across the hold, then a third, closer to your feet. One person vomits, and it doesn't stop. A girl wakes up screaming in confusion, eyes wide and glazed. Someone else starts to sweat through their rags, even though the air isn't hotter than usual. You don't know the names of these illnesses. You've only heard them whispered in marketplaces or muttered during dry seasons, but you don't need names anymore. You recognize danger when it breathes on your neck. It spreads without sound or permission. One day you're lying beside someone who murmured prayers in their sleep. The next, they don't move. Their skin feels hot, then cold, then hot again. Their lips crack. Their breathing turns shallow and fast. You shift away, just a little, as much as the chain allows. The space between you doesn't matter. You already know it's too late. The guards take longer to notice. Or maybe they notice and just don't care. They don't come down unless they have to. And even then, they cover their mouths with rags. You hear them call it flux or fever or pox. They say it like it's the weather. An inconvenience, not a crisis. They mutter to each other about how many can die before it's a problem. They argue about rations, not medicine. Some who fall sick are removed, not early, not gently, only when they're too far gone to speak or stand. The hatch opens. The chains are unlocked. The body is hauled out like garbage. You want to feel relieved when it happens. You want to believe that getting the sick away from you will help. But the smell lingers. The coughs remain. And the next day, 2 more fall ill. No one is immune. The strong get weaker. The quiet grow delirious. A man near the wall begins babbling nonsense in 3 different tongues before going silent for good. You stop drinking from the same bucket as the others. You wipe your mouth with your own sleeve, not the rag passed down the line. You try to breathe less deeply, to pull the air through your teeth, like it'll catch less poison that way. You know it won't work. You do it anyway. You pray sometimes, or what passes for prayer in this place, half-whispered bargains with the dark, promises made to gods you're not sure are still listening. You don't ask to be saved. You just ask not to be next. You ask not to be shackled beside the one who won't stop shivering. You ask not to wake up with your own skin burning, or your belly cramping so hard you can't sit upright. It's not much, but it's all you have. The worst is not knowing who's sick until it's too late. The hold is too dark to see faces clearly. You rely on sound, smell, the twitch of a shoulder, or the tremble of a leg. Some try to hide it. They muffle their coughs, turn their heads, whisper to no one. They know what happens if the guards think they can't be sold. But the body always tells. Eventually, it gives them away. You start measuring distance in breaths, how far away you are from the one who wheezes in their sleep. You try not to sleep at all if someone nearby has gone quiet. Quiet can mean rest, or it can mean death. You don't want to find out by accident. You shift slowly, carefully, hoping the motion doesn't draw attention. The chain pulls tight against your ankle. No farther. There are no clean corners, no safe zones. The illness moves like thought, seeping through everything. One morning you wake to find blood under your fingernails. Not yours, someone else's. You can't even remember touching them. The panic sets in before you realise the blood's dry, old. Still, you scrub your hands on the wood beneath you, trying to erase a stain that isn't visible in the dark. When someone dies now, there's less noise. The first time, there were screams. Now there's only shifting. A pause, a breath held, then release. The body is removed if it's noticed. If not, it stays until it becomes a problem. Either way, it doesn't matter. The disease has already moved on. You no longer fear the guards as much as you fear the ones beside you. Not because they mean you harm, but because their suffering spreads. You've stopped blaming them. They're not the danger. The ship is, the air is, the hunger, the heat, the very act of being here. You lie awake wondering how many more bodies it will take before someone above decides you're no longer worth keeping. And then you pray again, not for salvation, but for just one more day where your stomach turns without fever, where your skin stays dry, where you don't cough blood into your hand. You used to think the sailors were untouchable, gods above deck, holding the whips, the keys, the weapons. You thought they were in control, immune to the suffering they inflicted. But over time, you begin to see it. They're not immune. They're just farther up in the same sinking structure. They rot differently, but they rot all the same. You hear them first through the cracks in the planks above, boots thudding, shouts in languages you don't understand, laughter that sounds too loud and too brittle. At first you think it's confidence, then you notice the slurring, the arguments, the way some voices rise for no reason and end in abrupt silence. There's the smell too, not just sweat and brine, but liquor, sharp and sour, leaking through the wood like everything else. They drink constantly. You hear the clink of bottles, you hear them fall over each other. Sometimes you hear someone vomit over the rail, and you wonder how different it really is from what's happening below. Some of them are cruel for no reason. They don't wait for disobedience, they create it. A wrong glance, a misstep, an imagined insult. They strike because they can, because something inside them needs to remind itself it's not on the bottom. But others aren't like that. Some avoid eye contact. Some rush their duties just to get back above deck. You watch their hands shake when they come down to inspect the sick. It doesn't excuse them, but it tells you something. At night, you listen. The ocean groans, the ship creaks, and sometimes someone cries, not from the hold, from above. A sailor, maybe young, maybe not, muffling sobs into his sleeves or into the wood. You hear it through the gaps. You lie still and listen to the way their pain sounds so close to yours. You wonder who they've lost, or what part of themselves they're mourning. Not all of them survive the voyage. One night, a storm hits, loud, sudden, violent. The ship bucks like a living thing trying to throw its cargo. The hold becomes chaos. People scream. Chains snap taut. Someone bites through their own lip trying to stay braced. Above, you hear running. Then a shout. Then nothing. The next morning, a new name isn't called. There's no ceremony, no bell. Just a muttered phrase and an extra shift for someone else. A man is gone, swept overboard. No one flinches. Later, you hear them arguing. Not about you, about food, about water, about the captain. The tone tells you they're scared. Not of you, of everything. Of the sea, of each other, of what this voyage is doing to them. You understand that. You've been scared so long you've stopped noticing, but they haven't. They still expect to feel safe. So the fear bites deeper when it comes. Some are sick, not visibly, not like the ones dying in the hold, but there's something in their skin, their eyes, their posture. A sailor who used to yell suddenly stops speaking at all. Another starts pacing the deck even when there's nothing to do. You hear someone laughing to himself in the middle of the night. Long, unbroken, joyless. It makes your stomach twist. You wonder how many of them volunteered for this work. How many thought it would be just a job. How many told themselves a story to make it feel okay. You see how some of them avoid looking at the chained bodies. How some flinch at the sound of coughing. How others lean too far into cruelty, as if punishing someone else can keep the guilt off their own skin. You see what this voyage costs them, even if they chose to be here. But then the whip cracks again. Then a bucket is dumped too hard. Then a boot presses down on a back too long. Whatever pity you might have had dissolves under the weight of the next blow. They are breaking, yes, but they are breaking people while they break, and that matters more. Still, it changes the way you see things. This ship isn't made of two sides, powerful and powerless, guard and captive. It's a funnel. Everyone inside it is being crushed, just at different speeds. The difference is, they think they'll walk away from it unchanged. You know better. The ones above carry no chains, but you start to wonder what they'll bring home with them. What they'll smell like, what they'll dream about, whether they'll remember your face, or if you've already blurred into something less than human in their minds. Maybe they'll build a story to explain it all. Maybe they'll say they were just following orders, that they never had a choice. You lie back in the dark, the air thick around you, and you realise that even the men who control your body have lost something they can't name. Even the ones who hold the keys are trapped here too. Only their cages come with better air. At some point, though you don't know when, your own name starts to sound foreign. You still remember it, but it feels disconnected, like it belongs to someone else, someone who lived on land, someone who had a family, a past, a purpose. That person is not here. That person is not you. Here you're just a body, a breath, a weight that has not yet been thrown overboard. The days melt into one another. You try to count them by meals, by guard shifts, by coughs, but even that falls apart. Sometimes you think it's been a month. Sometimes it feels like a single endless day with no breaks and no sleep. The sun rises and sets somewhere above you, but you don't see it. You measure time by how your sores deepen, by how long it takes for the skin on your wrists to scab over and then split open again. Language unravels. You speak less, not because there's nothing to say, but because words don't work here. You begin to communicate in nods, in glances, in the twitch of a hand when someone nearby is about to vomit. You understand things instinctively now. The warning signs of fever, the rhythm of the sailor's boots, the shifting of the ship before a storm. You don't need sentences. You don't need questions. You just need to endure. When you do speak, your voice surprises you. It's hoarse, brittle, like it belongs to someone twice your age. Sometimes the wrong words come out, in a language you forgot you still knew, or in a mix of all the languages you once spoke, twisted together in a desperate attempt to name the things that are happening to you. Most of the time, no one responds, and that, more than anything, teaches you to stay quiet. You dream differently now, not of home, not of escape. You dream in fragments, of chains clicking, of bodies shifting, of dark wood and wet skin. You dream of the hold, even when you're still in it. You dream of breathing clean air and wake up choking. You dream of freedom, but it's always someone else's freedom. Yours is out of reach, and even in sleep, your mind understands that. Your body doesn't feel like it belongs to you. It's a thing that hurts, a thing that must be fed, emptied, beaten, moved. You stop thinking of it as me. It's just this shoulder, this mouth, this stomach that growls and aches and cramps. You lose track of how much weight you've lost, how much skin you've shed. The bruises fade and are replaced by new ones before you even notice. You forget what you looked like. You forget if you ever stood tall. Sometimes, a face across from you seems familiar. You think you knew them before the ship. Maybe you came from the same village. Maybe you passed each other in the marketplace once. But now, there's no confirmation. No shared words. No recognition in their eyes. Everyone is fading in the same direction. Into silence. Into anonymity. Into something less than human. Memories get slippery. The ones you try to hold on to change shape. You remember a mother's face, but her voice is gone. You remember laughter, but not what caused it. You remember a song, but the words are nonsense now, just sounds that echo in your skull when you try to sleep. Sometimes you wonder if you're inventing your past, just to have one. Maybe you were always here. You learn not to trust your thoughts. They come too fast or too slow. They loop. They stop making sense. You try to pray, but forget the right words. You try to count your heartbeats, but lose track. You wonder if you're still sane, and then wonder if sanity ever mattered in a place like this. You think about death, but not in fear. More like curiosity. What's on the other side of the wall your mind keeps hitting? The others feel it too. You see it in the way they look through each other. In the way they don't flinch anymore when someone dies. In the way they speak less and sleep with their eyes open. You realise survival doesn't mean winning. It just means continuing. And continuing has a cost. You don't think of yourself as a person anymore. Not the way you used to. You are not your story, your culture, your language, your memories. Those things were stripped away piece by piece. What's left is instinct, hunger, pain, a thin thread of awareness tied to a body that keeps breathing, even when you wish it wouldn't. This is what survival looks like now. Not strength, Not resilience, not defiance, just the ability to become something small enough to slip through the cracks without being noticed, something quiet, something forgettable. And slowly, without realizing it, you forget yourself. The ship slows. You feel it before you hear it. The rhythm of the hull changes. The sway becomes gentler, the groans of the wood less urgent. You don't know how long it's been, weeks, maybe more, but you recognize the difference. The sea is no longer pulling at the ship. It's guiding it. You feel it in your bones. Land is near. You want to feel relief. You try to. Somewhere inside you, something stirs at a flicker, a reflex. Maybe this is the end. Maybe the darkness and rot and chains have finished their chapter. Maybe land means freedom. But your body doesn't react. It's too tired, too trained by disappointment. Your mind reminds you that ships don't carry people like you home. They carry you somewhere else, somewhere worse. Voices rise above deck, shouting. Orders barked in sharp foreign syllables. Ropes creak. The sails rustle like dry leaves. You can't see anything, but you can smell it. Land has a smell, thicker than sea air, tinged with smoke and sweat, and something bitter, like tobacco soaked in bile. It doesn't smell like home. It smells like commerce. The hatch opens. Light spills in, hot and sudden. The guards are more alert today, more purposeful. No boredom in their eyes, no laziness in their movements. They shout with urgency, with energy. You're yanked upward before you can brace yourself. Your legs fold beneath you on the stairs, and you're dragged the rest of the way. The sun blinds you again. The heat is heavy. The dock is louder than anything you remember. You blink against the brightness and try to focus. The sky is massive. The air doesn't move. Men shout in languages you can't understand. Pointing, counting, checking ledgers. The port is a flurry of activity. Carts rattling, barrels rolling, whips cracking. You're not the only ship docked here. There are others just like this one. The smell proves it. You see more bodies like yours, blinking in the sun, too thin and too silent. You're herded into a line. You try to stand on your own, but your legs are too weak. They tremble under your weight, and you stumble forward. A guard grips your arms so hard, it feels like the bone will snap, then tosses you toward a wooden platform. You understand what this is, even before you see it. You are not arriving. You are being delivered. They inspect you again, just like before. Fingers in your mouth, hands on your ribs. They measure you like livestock, poke at your limbs, test your teeth. You're too tired to react. You've been through this already. You know your body isn't yours anymore. It's a unit, a specimen, a price tag. Men stand on the other side, watching. Some nod, some frown. Some point and shake their heads. You try not to look at them. You try not to see the way they judge you, but you can't block it out. You feel their eyes crawling over your skin. You are being assessed, catalogued, valued. And then, when someone is satisfied, you are claimed. There's no announcement, no goodbye, just a mark made in a book, a chain exchanged for a rope. You are no longer a number on a ship. You are now a possession on land. Someone paid to make you disappear from the manifest and reappear on a ledger somewhere else. Your feet barely touch the ground as you're led away. You don't ask where. It doesn't matter. You're not going home. The city, or whatever it is, swallows you. Its streets are loud, unfamiliar. The buildings are wrong, the smells are wrong, the colours are too bright. People pass by without looking at you. Some look too long. The person leading you doesn't speak. You are walked like an animal through a place that doesn't know your name and never will. You keep waiting for the moment it will feel like arrival, that sense of something ending. But it doesn't come. The ship is behind you now, but the hold is still inside you. In your muscles, in your lungs, in the way your arms hang at your sides. You feel hollow, used, alive in the technical sense, but not much more. You realise, finally, that survival doesn't mean freedom. It just means continuing in a new direction. The cage has changed shape, but it's still closed. The journey is over. The sentence has just begun. You remember them. Not all their names, most were never spoken, or were lost in the noise, but their faces stay with you, their silences, their endings. Even now, when the ship is behind you and the streets are loud and unfamiliar, you carry them. Not because you want to, because there's no way not to. There was the child, thin as rope, who barely spoke from the day you were locked together. He cried the first night, softly, into someone's chest. No one hushed him. No one had the heart. His breathing got weaker with each day. You saw his chest rise slower, then not at all. The guards didn't notice for hours. By then, his body had stiffened. You don't remember if they said anything when they took him away. There was the man who fought too hard. You admired him for a while. He refused food the first week, shouted at the guards, tried to shield a woman from a blow. He didn't last. They beat him until he stopped moving, then kicked him to see if he'd get up. He didn't. They left him where he fell, and when they did take him, they didn't even unshackle the body. There was the woman who stopped speaking. She had been quiet to begin with, but then she went silent in a way that made you nervous. Her eyes were open, but far away. When the others spoke to her, she didn't blink. One day during exercise, when the guards had loosened the chain just slightly, she ran. Not far, just to the edge. She jumped, no scream, just the sound of water, quick and clean. She vanished like a stone. You weren't close to any of them. That wasn't allowed. The hold didn't leave room for friendship, but you saw them. You knew them in the way only those who suffer together do. Not by names, but by breath, by the sound of someone crying in the dark, by the way they shifted their body to give you a little more space. You remember who tried to comfort others, who prayed, who never asked for anything. You remember whose limbs brushed yours when the ship rocked hardest. No one mourned aloud. There was no space for it, no permission. But you noticed the quiet that followed each loss. A pause in the whispers, a stillness in the hold. That was the grief, unspoken but present, hanging in the air with the stink and the heat and the knowledge that someone else had vanished into the dark without being remembered properly. The guards never marked the deaths, no tally, no ritual, no pause. When a body was taken, it was as if it had never been there. There was always another to fill the gap, but you remembered. Everyone did, even if no one said it. It was in the way people turned their heads, the way they looked a little longer at the next person who coughed, the way they wrapped their arms tighter around themselves during the night. Now, on land, you expect those memories to fade, but they don't. If anything, they grow sharper. Maybe it's the quiet moments, the seconds between orders, the pauses in the noise of the port. That's when they come back. The girl with the swollen feet, the old man who muttered in his sleep, the boy who died with his eyes open. Their faces return, not in nightmares, but in the cracks of waking life. You see them when you close your eyes. You hear them in your own breathing. You wonder if anyone else remembers them. The sailors, the guards, the men with ledgers and money? Probably not. To them they were waste, losses in a business transaction, weight thrown overboard to keep the profit afloat. But you remember. Not because you can't move on, because there's nowhere to move on to. These people are part of you now. Their absence carves space in your memory, in your silence. There will never be monuments for them. No names carved in stone, no flowers laid on graves. The ocean took most, the ship took the rest. The only evidence they existed is what you carry, not as burden but as proof that they were real, that they suffered, that they mattered, even if no one profitable thought so. You don't cry for them. The tears dried up long ago, somewhere between the salt air and the chain around your ankle, but you feel their loss steady and deep, like a bruise that never healed right. You carry it in your walk, in your silence, in the way you look at new faces, and think of the ones that didn't last long enough to see this shore. And though you don't say their names, not even in your thoughts, you know they're still with you, in every breath, in every scar, in every day that continues because theirs didn't. You used to think your survival mattered, that if you died, it would change something, cause a ripple, force someone to take notice. But now you understand. Even if your body had never made it off the ship, the world would keep moving. The sails would stay full, the crew would eat their meals, the ledger would be adjusted, not mournfully, but mechanically. You would vanish and someone else would take your place the next time the ship docked. The system is bigger than you. That's the first and final lesson. Bigger than your body, your name, your language, your will. It was built to absorb people like you, not one at a time, but in hundreds, thousands, an entire architecture designed to convert breath into profit, to turn suffering into numbers on a page. And the worst part is that it works. It works so well, you wonder how anyone ever thought to stop it. The ship you travelled on is already being cleaned, repaired, restocked. You see it from a distance, sails lowered, men scrubbing the deck with seawater and stiff brushes, shouting to one another like nothing terrible ever happened inside those wooden walls. They don't speak of the hold, they don't mention the dead. The stench fades, the blood washes away, and soon it will look like any other ship in the harbour. Soon it will leave again. You know the route by now. Even if no one explained it to you, your body learned it. From the coast of Africa to these unfamiliar shores, across waves that felt like teeth, the journey wasn't a mistake, or an exception, or a tragedy. It was a business. It has a map, a timetable, a projected return on investment. Somewhere, someone already knows how much profit your body is expected to generate over the next year. Whether you live or die will be measured in percentages, not prayers. And you're not the only one. You never were. More ships are docked along the harbour. You see other captives being marched away just like you were. Some scream. Some go silent. Some collapse and are dragged. It's all familiar. You watch and realise it doesn't matter who you are, what your story was, what you hoped for. To the men holding the ledgers, your individuality was never the point. You are weight. You are labour. You are loss or gain, depending on whether you can survive long enough to be useful. Sometimes you wonder if anyone has ever stopped it. A rebellion that worked, a ship turned back, a group of people who broke free and changed the course of things. But you've seen what happens when people resist. You've seen what happens when they beg. The machine doesn't slow. It doesn't pause to question itself. It just replaces the broken parts and keeps grinding forward. The sailors are cogs, the guards, even the merchants, each man playing his role, repeating the same instructions, reciting the same logic. Some of them believe what they're doing is necessary. Some don't think at all. But belief doesn't matter. The machine runs on routine, not conscience. You could disappear right now, and the only thing that would change is who takes your place on the ledger. Not your name, they didn't write that down. Just your height, your strength, your estimated price. You begin to see it everywhere. The economy of bodies, in the way the guards handle you, in the way the merchants weigh their words, in the way other people avert their eyes. You see how entire towns are built from this process. Ships, roads, ports, fortunes. You see how many people depend on the illusion that your life is less important than theirs. And how many believe it. You used to believe that suffering meant something. That if enough people suffered, the world would shift. But now you see how suffering can be absorbed, monetized, even normalized. It doesn't disrupt the system, it powers it. Even the ocean seems complicit. It swallowed the dead without complaint. It carried the ships like a silent partner. You sometimes think about how many people lie at the bottom of that sea, buried without names or markers, just cargo that didn't make it. The route is already mapped, the current already understood. Nothing you endured changed the course. And still, the machine turns. You are alive, you made it, and it means almost nothing. You were never meant to be remembered. That was the design. From the moment they tied your wrists, the machine treated you not as a person, but as a placeholder, a pair of hands, a set of lungs, a unit of labour. You were stripped of your language, your name, your memories, not by accident, but by design. Erasure was part of the plan. They kept records, of course, numbers scrawled in ledgers, counts of how many bodies boarded and how many disembarked. Tallies of death, notes on height, weight, teeth. But none of that was you. None of it contained your laughter before the ship, your favourite food, the names you whispered to yourself as the nights grew longer. None of it held your fear or your anger or the fragments of songs that drifted through your thoughts, even when your mouth was too dry to sing. And yet, despite everything, you were real. You had a life, you had people, you were loved, even if they never found you, even if they never knew what happened. There was a time when someone waited for you to come home, a time when your name was called aloud with joy, not silence, a time when you were more than a line item in someone else's profit. They took your body and used it. They tried to take your mind and break it. They tried to make you forget yourself. And for a time, maybe they did. Maybe you stopped dreaming. Maybe you stopped speaking. Maybe you thought you were only what they said you were. But none of that was true. Not then. Not now. You were never cargo. You were someone. You still are. You weren't the only one. There were thousands, tens of thousands, more than any single grave could hold. But that doesn't make your suffering smaller. It doesn't make your story less worth telling. It only makes the silence around you more painful. For every life lost in that hold, every voice that faded beneath the waves, there should have been a monument, a name spoken, a candle lit. There rarely was. But you are not forgotten. Not completely. You may have died with no grave, but you were seen. You were heard, even if the world moved on, even if the ship returned and sailed again, and someone else took your place. You existed, and that matters. That has always mattered. The world will try to erase the most uncomfortable truths, to bury the bones too deep, to soften the language, to paint the ship in prettier colours. But you don't disappear just because it makes someone uncomfortable to remember you. You are not a tragedy in a footnote. You are not just one of many. You were you, and even now, centuries later, someone remembers. Someone has stopped to picture what it was like to be where you were. Someone has imagined your breath in the dark, your thoughts as the water closed in, your grief as your name faded from your own memory. Someone has heard the echoes of your silence and chosen not to look away. Maybe they'll never know your name, but they'll remember that you had one. They'll remember that you were more than the system that swallowed you, that you had thoughts no one wrote down, that your suffering wasn't theoretical, wasn't symbolic, it was real. It had weight, and that weight still hangs in the air, waiting to be acknowledged. This remembrance doesn't bring justice. It doesn't undo the pain. It doesn't return what was taken. But it is something. A small act of defiance. A whisper in the face of silence. A refusal to let your memory drown with the rest. Because even if the world wanted to forget you, someone chose not to. Someone chose to listen. And in that listening, you live again, if only for a moment, in breath, in thought, in the space between the words. You were real, you still are. That brings us to the end of tonight's slow descent. Not a story of escape, but of endurance, silence, and the kind of remembrance that history almost forgot. If you're somehow still awake, thank you for drifting through the dark with me, and for bearing witness to lives the world tried to erase. If you'd like early access to more quiet reckonings and long, haunted walks through history's shadows, plus other perks like ad-free audio of the episodes, there's a link to the Patreon in the description. Feel free to like, subscribe, or leave a comment about other historical topics you'd like to see covered. And if you're listening on a podcast app, a rating or review helps others find their way to these stories.